Hello, good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you very much for joining us on our first virtual and online whisky tasting with Adelphi and Ardnamurchan, and in conjunction with Royal Mile Whiskies. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Arthur and his team at Royal Mile Whiskies for the support that they've given us, not only for this, but throughout the years. They've been a fantastic supporter for Adelphi. And yeah, as I said, the relationship will continue. So thank you very much for all joining us. We've been a bit overwhelmed, to be honest, with the support that we've received for this. 165 tasting packs went out to the world, as far as Australia and everywhere in between, and to the other coasts. So we've been to California, Taiwan, South Korea, and Israel, I believe. So we're all over the place. Thanks for tuning in. As I said, this is our first time doing this kind of thing, so we hope you enjoy it. So the format of this evening is basically we're just going to chat all things whiskey. Please keep your comments coming in throughout the feed. Ask questions within reason. We'll answer them, and I'll be sort of monitoring the chat and sort of coming back and forth into the conversation as well. Arthur and Alex, I'll bring them in shortly. What I will say is please share this link, and we'd like to get a few more people in. There's 180 people live at this moment in time. We're across Ardnamurchan's Facebook page, Adelphi's Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and Royal Mile Whiskies Facebook page. So I'll just go very quickly over the order of how we're tasting these whiskies for our new releases. And just before I go into that, actually, if you didn't get a pack, if you missed out, please don't worry. I said it before, please just pour your favorite dram, sit down and enjoy some whiskey chatter. We will be tasting these in an order from first up. It's going to be the Glover. Second in line is an Ardnamurchan cask sample. Then we're going to move on to a first for Adelphi, which is a single cask Armagnac. And then we're going to move on to the two well, they're all single casks, but the Linkwood, and then finishing on a nice sherry cask smoky Kalila. What I will say is, if you're not used to drinking Adelphi or certainly drinking single cask whiskey, these are quite high in alcohol, as you might already have seen. So, you know, if a wee jug of water is advised to help open up and experience new flavors within the dram, and just to take it down to a level that suits you. So yeah, what I will say, just a quick shout out actually. We were supposed to be in Limburg this weekend, Alex and I, and we were supposed to be actually right about now, we were supposed to be sitting down in a fantastic restaurant in a place called Darmstadt, at Mr. Pepper's restaurant, Chris and Marian's restaurant. And I know they're watching, so hi guys, and sorry we can't be there, but we very much look forward to doing the virtual, I think this will be a virtual whiskey tasting dinner, and we look forward to hearing more about that in the coming weeks. And one more thing, the bottles, the new releases will be going on sale by the second week of May. So yeah, keep the questions in. I'm going to now introduce Arthur Motley, Purchasing Director from Royal Mile Whiskies, and Alex Bruce, our Managing Director at Adelphi and Ardnamurchan.
Hi everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Alex. How you doing?
Good evening, Arthur.
Yeah.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
I haven't seen anyone in a long time. So should we kick off then? So introduce yourself.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So as Connal said, my name's Arthur. I do the buying at Royal Mile Whiskies and look after the web sales. So big whiskey fan and also a big Adelphi fan. My first job in whiskey was working at Scotch Front Whisky Society as a cask buyer, and I think Adelphi and Scotch Front Whisky Society have this lovely similarity to them, of the care with which they source casks, and also this kind of debranded presentation of whiskey, which at SMWS, that's how I fell in love with whiskey, and yeah, I still love Adelphi.
Very kind.
Well, keep bottling good stuff. That's all I'm saying. So should we? I suppose we kick off with the first dram. I think it's worth saying how we think we're going to kind of go through this as well. So I personally feel, and we had a quick email exchange before, that it takes a little while to assess and kind of work out a whiskey. So rather than us going through the whiskey and kind of coming up with tasting notes as we go along, we'll have a little nose. We'll let you guys at home taste and make up your own mind, and then we'll kind of convene at the end of each dram and share our thoughts. So in between time, we can talk about the project, what's going on, whiskey, all that stuff. So yeah, if we start with the Glover, if everyone at home, you all right, Connal?
Yeah, on that note, I'm just going to duck out for a bit and check the chat, and I'll be back soon. Okay.
See you later.
See you in a bit.
So at home, if you want to pour the Glover, I'm just going to give myself a wee top up. And start nosing away. It's unlikely you're that new to whiskey if you've come to Adelphi and bought this pack. But as Connal says, it is cask strength. What are we looking at? 54.7%. So it will take a little bit of water, but we'll leave that up to you guys how much water you add in. So yes, Alex, tell me about the Glover project, because as independent bottlings go, it was a really ambitious and unique project.
Absolutely. I mean, it really fell into our lap back in 2015. Up until that point, we'd been quite albeit fairly niche. We'd been an independent bottler who did the kind of normal independent bottling things and selected casks to bottle straight from the cask. But the whole Glover project kicked off when I met with a group of gentlemen who had become involved in trying to promote a man named Thomas Blake Glover. Now, Thomas Blake Glover was born in Aberdeenshire back in 1820s, probably 1830s. He left at quite a young age. He went abroad. He went to the Far East, and he ended up in Japan. Now, he ended up being there probably about 16, 17 years old, just ahead of the Treaty of Amity and Commerce being signed by Japan and the UK. And that treaty opened up Western trade. But Glover saw a huge opportunity to not just trading, but to trying to build his reputation in Japan with the people that mattered. So he started strategically bringing very important people back to the UK to learn about Western civilization, culture, education, all these kind of things. And then as they fed back into the Japanese system, he kind of was taken with them. So he had the ear of many influential people. Now, he ended up building companies. He built some very famous companies that exist today, like Mitsubishi, Kirin Brewery, huge Japanese companies. He also arranged for shipbuilding, railway building, all these incredible industrial advances for the country. And as a result, he was the first Westerner to be given the Order of the Rising Sun.
Wow.
In fact, one of the first people outside of that very small part of Japanese hierarchy.
Which I imagine is still pretty uncommon as well.
Exactly, yeah. He's nicknamed the Scottish Samurai, which kind of sums him up, really. And his house in Nagasaki is still visited by more than 4 million people every year. So
wow.
In Japan, he is incredibly well known. Back here in Scotland, certainly in 2015, unless you came from Fraserburgh, you probably hadn't heard of him. So the concept was they were going around looking at different Scottish products to call after him, to name after him. And we, of course, fitted the whiskey category. So there they were asking me to make or to blend a Scotch whiskey that could be called the Glover. And I listened to this fascinating story and basically said, well, surely we should be trying to blend the two countries. This is a perfect example of Japanese and Scottish history coming together. Mm-hmm. and therein started a rather long process of trying to make it legal, and also finding the correct whiskies to put together.
So this is not the first Glover, but I suppose because we've got lots to talk about, we maybe not go into the previous bottlings. Let's talk about what's in the glass now.
So this is batch 5. There's been a pause since batch 4, and the main reason for that, well, there's 2 reasons. One is we were looking for a partner to work with in Japan on an ongoing basis into the future. And secondly, my dream has always been that these fusion whiskies, of which Glover was the first, these international blends, should contain our very own Ardnamurchan as the main Scottish base, if you like. So I'm delighted to say that not only does this contain Ardnamurchan, but it contains our new Japanese partners, if you like. I don't know if they would describe that or not, but certainly we like to think that. My great friend Ichiro at the legendary Chichibu Distillery makes up the second half of this whiskey. So it is relatively young, as both distilleries are, but it is the first time Ardnamurchan has been used in this international blending. So it's a really, really exciting project.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I remember when we started, when COVID first hit and the lockdown first started, and we were talking about this project. You kindly said, how can we help? And we hatched this plan to do this tasting project. And I said, well, absolutely great, love to taste Adelphi whiskies. And you started the rundown of I said, what would the whiskies be? And you said, we're going to do a Glover with Ardnamurchan and Chichibu. And I was like, we're in. I don't care. We could drink Adelphi private stock for the other 4 drams, and I'd be happy. Yeah. So if I'm sure many people watching will know this, but there's a lot of excitement brewing for Ardnamurchan as a malt to hit the market soon. But also Chichibu is a buzz whiskey around the world. Very, very hard to get your hands on a bottle. Retail prices, well, what do they start at? 300 quid, I suppose, maybe a bit more, depending on what they're dealing with and where they're selling it. It sells out instantly through ballot often, and sadly, then the following month they tend to trade at about £600. So it's a small distillery in Japan. What do they make? Less than 100,000 litres, I think, 60,000 litres.
I think he's been expanding recently. I went there.
Oh, so he has, yeah.
I went there with Anthony from Kilhoman actually back in 2011. In fact, I can remember it very well because we had this lovely tour right from the washbacks, which are stirred by hand, ending up in the warehouse, which is all part of the complex. And because at that time we were just beginning to think about building our own distillery, I was looking at all the details of construction more than anything else. And I spotted in the roof space and the warehouse construction, he had a huge amount of bracing. And I said to Ichiro, why is all this bracing? And he said, well, we unfortunately get quite a few earthquakes. And 2 weeks later, they had the terrible earthquake. So that was the last time I was there. I can remember it vividly. But it's a great distillery and fantastic spirit.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So now I've had a quick nose of the next dram that we're going to have, Ardnamurchan. And as I understand it, that is one of the ingredients within this dram, effectively, this vatting. So, and is it more than one cask of each?
Yeah, I mean, we were very lucky to be offered 2 refill bourbon barrels of Chichibu from 2013, both unpeated. We were offered a number of different samples. We were sent a number of different samples, and it was the pure Chichibu, the one that didn't have the wood influence was the one that really caught my eye and my nose. So we ended up buying those 2 casks, and they sat on my desk for probably 4 or 5 months while I tried to work out what I was going to put with them, because the problem when you're doing these international blends, quite often Scotch will just completely overtake the other constituent. And Chichibu has this beautiful fruit, this lovely sort of satsuma tangerine sweetness to it. And I was really worried about what if we use something too big from Scotland, potentially it would just destroy that. And it just so happened I was looking with Connal, we were looking at Ardnamurchan samples for a number of projects, but also for the single malt coming up. And we thought, oh, let's just pour in an unpeated bourbon of Ardnamurchan. And it just worked. It was unbelievable how the balance was there. Neither of them shouted too much. They just come together. And then we played with it a bit more, and we added a bit of a peated cask as well. About 80% of our peated Ardnamurchan, also from a bourbon cask, both at 4 years old. And that basically is what you've got in your glass.
Yeah, so I suppose, well, I mean, it's generous samples. They're 5 cl cask strength, so I doubt anyone's hoofed all that down already. But I would say it is well worth, we should have warned you, hopefully everyone's got more than one glass. It's well worth leaving some volume in the first glass so you can compare it and unpick it when we come to Ardnamurchan. Because as Alex says, that's one of the components within this Glover blend. Hi, Connal. You're back.
No one's hoofed up the first. There's a few characters in the chat. I doubt there's much left of it, to be honest.
Good for them. Well, shall we convene and talk a little bit about what we think it tastes like? Alex, it's your whiskey. Tell us.
It's interesting.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I've had this in the glass now, 2 or 3 minutes, probably a bit longer. I've been waffling along. Last time I tried it, the smoke kicked in more at the finish. Tonight, I was getting smoke and fruit on the nose, maybe because it's a bit warmer here in Scotland. I don't know about where everyone else is, but we've had a lovely day. It's been 16 degrees or so outside, and my room is definitely warmer. Normally, I've got a jersey on, and the fruit is really coming out tonight, but the smoke is too. And interestingly enough, as Arthur said, if you do have a chance to keep some in the glass before we go on to the Ardnamurchan, I actually think that the smoke in the Glover is almost coming out more than it is from that individual constituent of the Ardnamurchan. And that to me shows that the blend has worked in that it's allowing all these different aspects to come through. What are you getting, Arthur? I mean, my fruit notes are sort of, as I say, these tangerine, orangey things, but I'm also getting some honey as well.
Yeah, I was down the kind of peach and stone fruit kind of idea, but I could see that drizzle with a bit of honey. I mentioned apple as well, but that's a pretty common whiskey note anyway. Before I talk about the peat, I suppose there's a different kind of tranche of flavour. I also thought there was a pleasing kind of slightly mineralic quality to it, like mineral quality, like wet clay almost, like modelling clay. And my mum used to model clay, and that made me think of that. And then on the palate, obviously there's smoke on the nose, but on the palate, that's where you really feel that smoke coming through. And I think a spice as well. I found Chichibu, the rare times I've had it, quite a spicy whiskey, and not necessarily spice from wood, and not spice of strength of alcohol as well. But as I say, it's only been 3 or 4 times I've tried it, and I wondered if it was that coming through. And then I thought a balanced seaweedy peat.
There's definitely salinity,
and a kind of biscuity, malty heart as well. But then you're talking about young whiskies, 2 young whiskies, so you would expect that. But nothing immature, really balanced, really well integrated. Did you marry them for a period of time, the casks, or?
No, we didn't. So that's one of the things you're not allowed to. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I can share. So the company car is a Volkswagen Caddy, and I love it a bit. But we to legally take them out of the Scotch out of Scotland, it needs to be teaspooned. because single malt can't leave Scotland unless it's in a bottle. So we teaspooned it. What was it we teaspooned it with, Alex? Was it liquid?
23-year-old liquid, 6 bottles.
Liquid. Just whatever was left in bond, kind of thing, you know. And we took the casks down to Norfolk, where we do the blending for the fusions. So I was driving down with my partner in crime, Gordon Hamilton, who's our operations director, and we had 2 casks of whiskey in the back, going all the way down south. And we got there, and we had the Chichibu delivered to the English Whiskey Company, and did the blending there, and then stayed the night and back up the next morning. So it was quite an adventure.
Yeah, I love a Volkswagen Caddy. I had a minivan. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Well, that's amazing what a successful whiskey it is, because you're playing with some very pricey ingredients there. I mean, as I mentioned the economics briefly of Chichibu, and it's a very bold thing to do, to take such a precious kind of thing. No, I commend you for it. And it's great, this destruction of value that you've that you've put into place. I'm all for it.
When I approached Ichiro about this, because he'd previously sold us the Hanyu as well for the initial Glover batches, which was even, that was incredibly scary at the time as well. And he said he really understands what we're doing and loves this international blending. Having said that, when you look at the price of not just buying the casks, but also shipping them all the way from Japan to England, and then Connal and Gordon driving down in a caddy van and bringing the blend back, it does make it a lot more expensive. But we are still able to get it out there at a price which we believe is very realistic if you think of the constituents. And just the only other thing I would say on that is one of the other recent fusions we did a couple of years ago, the second batch of the Winter Queen, which was with our great friends at Zuidam, or the Millstone brand in Holland. So that was, at the time, the whiskey from Zuidam was the oldest Zuidam on the market, except we had it in a cask, in a barrel rather than in a bottle. It was 19 years old from memory. And I kind of threw caution to the wind. I think, Connal, you just started. And I said, look, this deserves the best. And we threw in 25-year-old Motley, 33-year-old Chinini, 25-year-old.
Was in there.
It was one of those blends. It's just got more and more extravagant.
Yeah, it was a really good whiskey, and another, we haven't got time to talk about it now, but another fascinating story. Love the Dutch. It's
it's
the Dutch.
It's all, sorry, it's on the palate for me. It's pineapple cake and biscotti almonds. It's got that lovely biscuit. Yeah. Is it panettone or panettone? I've got no idea.
I didn't say that actually, but I did write that down. Sugared almond, toasted almond as well.
Same.
Yeah. So I think we've got to crack on, really, haven't we? Really, that's a very good start and an extremely interesting whiskey. So next, although slightly side by side, Ardnamurchan. So your new. Well, it's not new anymore, but is going to be new to market soon. As a component within the Glover, this is the sample effectively from exactly the same cask that went into the Glover mix. In what proportions did you say?
Yeah, so the peated, we cut back the peated cask in terms of the volume, if you like, to about 80%. So we ended up with 3 full bourbon casks plus this 80% of this peated cask, also ex-bourbon. And the remaining 20% remained in the wood, and these miniatures have been extracted straight from that cask as samples. Look, it is technically the first time we've been tasting like this, an Ardnamurchan single malt. It isn't for sale. I mean, it was included in the tasting pack, but it is not. It is not for sale. We still got a few months before we release our first official single malt. But the reason, as you said, that we are tasting this tonight is not only to see a very naked and raw Ardnamurchan without hardly any wood influence at all, but also as a constituent of this Glover that we've just had, just to understand how the ingredients marry together, if you like.
Yeah. Can I pause this there for a moment? Because Connal, on our little screen, Connell's pointed out that there's been some questions coming up on the bottom of the screen. I haven't spotted them. Now I can rewind in my head. There was one question which was, actually, no, let's do this one. Mickey Plummer asks, why Norfolk? Well, exactly. Why Norfolk?
Well, someone needs to build a bonded warehouse and have a verified blending warehouse just over the border. That would be a lot easier. But look, Andrew Nelstrop's been very kind to us over the years. I've known him a long time, and it's always good fun driving down there. Although, admittedly, I never have had to do that journey.
It's not fun. I have done it. It's not fun. Okay, so you basically had a cooperative person with a bonded warehouse with vatting tanks and all the kind of things you needed to do. Yeah? And
the verification. So we actually pay for his verification without getting too technical. As a Scotch whisky producer and bottler, you have to be verified by HMRC. So we actually have to verify him, or he has to verify, which we pay for, that he can manage Scotch whisky, if you like.
Okay. And then the next question that I saw was, is that the purpose of Ardnamurchan Distillery, as in going into blends? I think I'm doing this slightly from memory, but from blends or into Glover style projects? Very
good question. Straight answer, no. But there's more to it than that. Basically, as we approach single malt for Ardnamurchan, now we are producing best part of 350 to 400,000 litres of alcohol per year now at Ardnamurchan, which is quite a lot for a small company. However, I always have said, and everyone that's advised us over the years has said, you have to build the stocks early as possible. Otherwise, you'll always be chasing your tail. So we are filling the warehouses. We have now over 9,000 casks sitting up there maturing. But part of this stepping stone towards the single malt is learning about how Ardnamurchan actually tastes together with other casks. Because at the end of the day, a single malt is more than one cask. It's going to be a vatting of 20, 30, 40 casks, for each of our batches, if you like. And so I have to see how these things marry. And this ideal circumstance has arrived where we have not only our international blending through the Fusion Whisky series, but we also have recently done a collaboration with our great friends at Kilhoman called the Kilhard, which was it started off as a bit of a funny story after the London Whisky Show and a couple of glasses of wine. There we go. But there is a serious point to it. It is a blend of two Scottish distilleries of similar size, both West Coast, and it actually has turned out quite well. So we are hoping that we will be doing more of that. But yeah, answering the question, there will always be Ardnamurchan in blends, in blended malt. But it is very much designed as a distillery to produce single malt.
Okay. And so I've went up to Ardnamurchan, a couple of times actually now, but the one last year was great because those warehouses were getting fairly full, and along with your importers, we had a lovely afternoon charging around the distillery and trying various different casks. Yeah. And this is obviously, is it one of two styles that you're making there, a peated and unpeated? Yes. So it's not entirely representative of what Ardnamurchan is making. I've tried lots of very different tasting whiskey to this. So this is peated to what level?
So it's firstly, I should say it's Highland peat rather than Isla peat. So you don't get that iodine, I suppose. It's a softer style of peat, but this is the spec on this as malt is 30 parts per million.
Right.
So by the time 4 years in the cask and now in the glass, we're probably looking at about 18, 20, something like that.
Right.
Maybe a bit less.
We've got a question in from Ewan McGregor.
Oh no, Ewan. Ewan is very important. He basically built the distillery.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much for joining us, Ewan.
Cheers, Jim.
So, any idea how our 2014 Ardnamurchan PX and Oloroso casks are coming along?
They're empty. Sorry.
Oh, well, never mind. So, I mean, going back to the Glover. I mean, it's the other whiskies, kind of unpicking it. You're kind of trying to work it out and kind of almost reverse engineer it. I mean, this is a fairly wild smoky whiskey, still pretty young. It's almost slightly cluttered in a way. I don't mean that negatively, but it's really been tamed and very well integrated into the Glover. So you used less of that cask.
Yeah, look, we tried with 100%, and it was too much smoke.
Yeah, it's pretty smoky.
And also that note you brought out earlier, the sort of almost funky note of kind of wet hay. We wanted to tame that slightly as well, and that was all in this.
I see, wet hay. That's interesting. I was right down the farmyard route. I was kind of like farms and welly boots. I actually said, but I put question mark, but I could be a little bit more confident because you said wet hay, but almost slightly silagey, like dirty rubber farmer's boots, basically, when he's been mucking around. And it's coastal as well, isn't it? There's a kind of bladderwrack seaweed feel to it.
It's really coastal. I'm just going to add a drop of water here because...
I've already done that. I might take more.
Yeah, it's wet woolly jumpers, isn't it?
Yeah. Wet dog, slightly wet dog.
It, especially with the water, it reminds me of, if you can imagine a Kulila without the iodine. It's got that lovely old dairy kind of style going on, which after 4 years is quite... we weren't expecting that, to be honest. Really, really happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the... You can tell it's not the finished article. It's still... No. It's worked fantastically well as this ingredient. And I suppose for many people, it'll be the first time we're trying Ardnamurchan. I was almost wanted to say it's not entirely representative because it's one parcel of stock that you've kind of made. And we're still judging it a little bit young.
Look, I spotted, and I don't know if he's on tonight. If he is, then a big hello to our great friend Ho Cheng in Taiwan.
Yeah, he's on.
He is. Yeah. So Ho Cheng, you wrote, I think, maybe yesterday, that it wasn't the style that you had listened to me talking about previously. And I agree with that. This is a single cask, a single bourbon cask. It is the most naked style, if you like. But by the time we're finished, hopefully conjuring up the magic and making a single malt out of all the different styles we have, it will be changing again. But this is one element of it, and a very important element.
Yeah. And I don't think I tried much of it when I was up there. I really admire the way you are bringing Ardnamurchan kind of into the world, into the market. And it's quite different. I suppose in my job, it's been very interesting. I suppose the first 5-10 years of my whiskey buying career, I was only speaking to companies that had existed for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. And then suddenly there are all these new companies. And how you bring a new single malt to market has been fascinating, the very, very different approaches. And I found yours really interesting. And I think it's really clever. You might just be fluky. But you've kind of masked Ardnamurchan as a spirit in the lead up to it being released as a single malt, in doing these AD vattings. And if people don't know what Alex and his team, in a slightly obtuse manner, have been vatting whiskey that is old enough to be called single malt with some new make spirit, so younger spirit below 3 years old. So they can't call it whiskey. And I feel, and I imagine, oh, there you go, there's an AD bottling there. I feel that this is kind of delayed judgment of what Ardnamurchan is, which maybe Kingsbarns or Kilchoman or even Arran a long time before that, they brought, and this is not a criticism of them, I love all those distilleries, they have brought something to market because they want to get a little bit of money back, and there's so much interest in it. But people are effectively trying 4-year-old whiskey, which, like this one, is, you know, like my daft collie, kind of charging around in the glass, but not kind of old enough in many ways. And you get an odd first impression of what the whiskey would turn into. But Ardnamurchan, this clever way of it never quite being a single malt up until now, has kind of delayed that judgment. And it's still a little bit of a mystery and really exciting. Is it this year? That was the plan, wasn't it?
The plan is still, we'll make a final decision at the end of May, obviously current circumstances, but we are still working towards a launch towards the end of September.
Right.
The whole process of the evolution, if you like, there was some luck, and I hope there was some judgment, but there was definitely luck at the beginning. When we started producing spirit in July 2014, one of the things that I wanted to do was to understand how it was maturing as a spirit as quickly as possible, just in case we had to tweak it at all. And the best way to do that is to fill it into quite active, smaller casks. So we bought, from memory, 25, 55-litre American oak sherry hogsheads. And we popped them in the spirit in there in about September 2014. And within 18 months, it was ready to drink. Completely confused us. We didn't know what to do with it. So I said, oh, fine, we'll go and bottle it. So that was the first batch, the 2016 AD. And then obviously we filled a few more octaves, but gradually over the years, as we progressed through to 2019, we started bringing in the real casks, if you like, as well. And as you pointed out, we've been feeding in a little bit of actual whiskey as well as the younger stuff, spirit. But the commercial judgment part comes in there as well, because it's all very well reaching a quality point where you believe you can go to market. That might be at 3 years and a day. It may not be, depending on, you know, what your spirit, how the makeup of your spirit is, how it matures. But from a commercial point of view, you have to make sure that you've got enough to go beyond your first release. My gut feeling was that we shouldn't release at 3 years and a day, even if it was ready. We should go as far as we could for enough of the casks to be ready for the first batch, the second batch, the third batch, and so on. So there would be no delays in between once we started the launch. And that's really, you know, why we waited this long.
Yeah, great. So you're going to come to market with, how old is it going to be? Will it have an age statement? And also Jason Braun, who I think asked the other question about blending. Yeah. Are you planning on keeping Ardnamurchan unchill filtered and natural color?
Absolutely. Yeah. Strength-wise, it will be 46 or above. We don't actually know yet. It will be about the taste, not about within reason anyway. We're not too worried about the actual alcohol level, as long as it's no less than 46.
But can I? Yeah, sorry.
You have more duty on high strength, so we don't want to go stupid. But it will be about getting the right balance of reducing with water. But absolutely unchill filtered, natural color.
Great.
I think it was great to include this and to give people a wee insight into, you know, how our bourbon casks are doing. And of course, it's fun because this is a component of the previous dram, the Glover. However, this is really quite a raw cask, and you know, with water, it really does start showing some fruit in behind all those wet hay woolly jumper farmyard welly boots. If you get the water right with this, you are rewarded. So I would stress to people, if you've poured yourself a dram, chucked it back, and it's been a bit hot for you, revisit it with a wee bit of water. It really does make make a difference. There's a wee question here from Simon. Are there a lot of experimental or different casks, wine, rum, etc. at Ardnamurchan, or is it the focus on building up stocks of ex-sherry and ex-bourbon to avoid chasing your tail, as you mentioned earlier? Do you want to take that one, Alex, or are you happy for me to take it?
There you go for it.
Yeah, no, just to answer your question, Simon, basically, we've been pretty traditional. We've been filling bourbon, ex-sherry casks, all first fill, although we have started our refill program quite recently. And, you know, we get our American oak bourbon barrels from Old Forester, and we get PX and Oloroso from a couple of very, very well-known bodegas in Spain as well, in Jerez. So, no, we're pretty traditional. However, last year towards the end, we did fill our first port pipes, and we have re-racked a small proportion of our 2014 bourbon casks into a friend of Alex's, actually. He owns a small boutique champagne house in Reims, into some champagne casks. So that is something to look forward to in the near future.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're not afraid of experimenting, but the whole foundation is about building traditional stocks, and predominantly, and then just throwing in a few interesting casks. Also, probably a good time to mention, because we have a lot of control, we aim to have a lot of control over our barley. So we're growing a huge proportion of our barley right here, where I'm talking from today, in Fife, just outside Dunfermline. And that's getting what they call toll malted. So it's taken all the way, the provenance follows it all the way through the malting process to the distillery. So barley is a key aspect for me in terms of the provenance, if you like, and having some control on that. But every year we buy in a month's worth of Golden Promise as well. So that's going back to, you know, the 1970s in terms of barley varietals. And that, I tend to put that varietal into some quite interesting casks. So we'll have some very unique bottlings of Ardnamurchan in the future.
There's a very well-timed question from Donald Brody. Have you changed the process from your original recipes, or are you still experimenting with different grains, etc.? And I'll add to that a little bit, because I was curious about if you had a vision for the type of whiskey that you wanted to make, for like, I want it a bit like this great Scottish distillery, or, you know, etc., etc. And did you have to tweak it along the way? How close to that vision did you get? But Donald's question is more important than mine.
Yeah, well, big shout out to Donald. Donald built our gates at Ardnamurchan. For those of you who haven't seen, they are amazing. They went in quite recently, complete with the dancing men, actually, one on each gate. So yeah, answering your question, Donald. So the original recipe, when we kicked off back in 2014, it was very straightforward. We cranked everything up. We knew we were working a 5-day week, one mash per day. We knew the principles, and we also had Dr. Jim Swan, the lovely late great Jim Swan, in the background, who helped design Ardnamurchan, as he had many other distilleries. And he said, "Get yourselves going and give me a shout in a few months, and I'll come up and I'll wave my magic wand." And that's exactly what he did. That's not to say there was anything wrong with the early stuff. If anything, it was a heavier spirit, and most of it is sitting in the lowest warehouse, so the underground almost Dunwich warehouse number 1, where you see the picture earlier. Well, it's behind us now. You can see the mold already on the ceiling. The temperature in there is about 12 degrees year round. The angels have been doing their job. It smells of rancio and Dunwich warehouse. It's just absolutely perfect. And we've put in our early heavier spirit in there because we know that's going to take longer to mature. So we've given it every chance of a nice mellow, soft maturation, if you like. So once we'd introduced Jim's recipe, if you like, which was a bit of tweaking, in terms of barley, even though we have been able to grow quite a lot of it here, the farm here, we've stuck with the farmer's ideas, if you like, in terms of what he wants to grow. So up until last year, we've been using Concerto, but we switched over in April last year to the new variety called Laureate. And just to prove a point, and barley, water, all these things that sit in the marketing handbook of whiskey distillers, how important are they? But just to prove a point on how important barley is, that week when we switched to Laureate, Gordon McKenzie, our distillery manager, rang me up and he said, "We've got a problem." And I said, "Oh no, what is it?" He said, "We've lost the fruit." He said, "You can walk into the tun room and the sweetie shop is gone, literally." So I said, what have we done? What's changed? And he said, "Well, the only thing we've changed is we've moved from Concerto to Laureate." So we looked at it and we consulted Jim's notes, which he had left, a lovely file of notes. And he said, "This is what you do if you lose your fruit." And we followed the recipe, the changes, and we got the fruit back. And not only did we get it back, we got it back in spades. And the ensuing new make after that second change, if you like, is just fantastic. And it's been, we get it analysed by Tatlock and Thompson. It's been getting very, very high scores. So we're quite.
Well, I have to ask, what did you do? How did you change it?
No, look, Jim's big thing. He had a number of things. It's like this jigsaw of production, but his big thing, if you have to start off with a clean wort, so the liquid that comes off the mash tun has to be as clear as possible. Yeah. And we even have this little sight glass in one of the return pipes, so you can see how clear it is. And so we had been raking gently the mash, but if you want clear wort, if you want the clearest wort, you stop raking. So we just stopped raking for the unpeated barley, and the fruit came back in spades.
Great. So Ho Cheng mentioned earlier on. It's got a question, and the Ardnamurchan is very nice, especially when this is official, the first Scotch bottling. So we spoke about this just before we came on air, and I said, "I think this is the first ever official bottling of Ardnamurchan," and we were like, "Shh, make sure they all open them." So hopefully you've all opened and destroyed all that value of that collectible whiskey. But that's what it's for drinking. So, and what he says, when I first thought of West Coast style is something like Oban or maybe Talisker. This one is very unique. I was also thinking Talisker with a bit more peat. I know you can get these Talisker distillations that can be very peaty, but to try them in isolation is quite rare. But for me, I feel like a kind of peaty Talisker, which is a compliment.
What Ho Cheng just said about it being unique, someone asked us right back in 2012 when we started designing or actually building. He said, "What do you want it to taste like?" And I just said, "Different."
Yeah.
Because, and so it should. If you are maturing on site, if you are distilling in your way and doing everything in a traditional manner, you should be able to get a unique taste.
That's the point. That's absolutely the point. We don't want whiskies to taste the same. But I suppose when you come to a new one, you as whiskey fans and as a shop as well, we kind of benchmark it in between. All right, so it's a bit like this and it's a bit like that.
Sure.
Any other comments on that? I think Connal and myself said a bit more about the flavour. How do you see this whiskey?
Me?
Yeah.
No, sorry. No, look, it is really opening up with that water. We spoke about it earlier. There's been a few comments mentioning that as well. I actually think the longer in the glass, I've got quite a generous glass, as you can see. Beautiful gift from our German importer, Thilo. But with this amount of air now circulating, the smoke, funnily enough, is actually beginning to pick up a bit. I've noticed more peat smoke now than I did initially. Maybe the alcohol was keeping it down. I don't know.
There's great texture to it as well. The fruit, I'm thinking kind of a little bit of pear. I said fruit polos as well, and that smoke has gone beyond that farminess to a slight kind of ashy smoke as well.
It's interesting because in the unpeated we get a very good consistent toffee banana, and that comes through in the AD spirit quite a lot too. But this with the peat, it's not quite so prevalent.
Do you change the cuts when you're making the peaty whiskey?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there are various things we do. The mashing, we rake peated. We don't rake unpeated now. Fermentation, the unpeated gets an extra yeast, a much fruitier yeast, which is probably where the banana's coming from. And then the cuts are slightly different as well. Yeah.
So I noticed the time. What are we on? 8:20. So we're going 50 minutes. So yeah, we knew these first two drams would be quite dense to talk about in terms of content. Jesperson. Oh God, Jesper, don't get him started. Will you continue with the blockchain technology from the AD releases when you release the Ardnamurchan single malt? Jesper, yes, he will. He loves blockchain.
That's enough of that one, eh?
Tune in next week for a lecture on blockchain.
Yeah. And I'll answer this one for you as well. You and McGregor, did you ever get the floor malt floor into operation at Ardnamurchan? No, they didn't.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
It's work in progress, Ewan.
Yeah. Good luck.
It's going to happen. We just need to.
By the time you came back and put it into operation.
Yeah. So, so I think we've got to move on, but congratulations. That's the first official bottling of Ardnamurchan single malt.
No,
and it doesn't exist anymore. It's all been destroyed. Perfect.
No, it's not. There'll be someone, I guarantee you, there'll be someone there that's...
okay. Well,
the label will self-destruct in 1 week.
Yeah, and boo you.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to take a bit of an about turn now, a bit of a junction, because it's Armagnac next, is it?
I think it is.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're doing Armagnac next. Okay, cool.
Just,
I love Armagnac.
If you do have a bottle in front of you and have some glasses on, look at the subtle change to the dancing man's head.
Oh, he's got a beret on, hasn't he?
Hey, there
he's
you
got a beret.
Attention to detail.
Bravo. That's good.
A lot for our marketing department.
Keith Hewitt, have you had to change your strategy since COVID? Can we not talk about COVID?
Yeah, look, it means that we can all sit at home and enjoy drams with friends and family from all over the world. Look, it's a terrible time, but we're all adapting, and certainly the whiskey industry is trying to adapt through technology with these online events as well. So long may that continue in terms of keeping in touch with you.
Absolutely. So Armagnac, tell us about this cask. The first for you guys to bottle Armagnac. You bottled rum and that's it, is it?
Irish.
That's still whiskey.
Still whiskey. Yeah, I think it is actually.
Cool.
Well, Arthur, I'm sure we've told you in the past, but the Adelphi selection process, if you like, if you want to call it that, is very, very simple. We don't hold vast stocks of maturing stocks. We buy just in time. We buy whiskies that we like in terms of the flavor, and we either bring them on for a few months or we bottle them straight away. So basically, it's flavor first. When we like something, we will buy it and we will bottle it. Now, this Armagnac sample is one of, Connal, what were they, about 20? For the right?
Of samples?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was around about that, yeah.
I think it was about that. I think at some whiskey show, I had met up with an old friend from France who's in the business. And I had mentioned probably after a dram or two that I'd love to, one of these days bottle a cognac or an Armagnac. Anyway, this was him, true to his word, sending us 20 samples completely out of the blue. and completely blind. They said Armagnac, they said the vintage, and that was it. And we went through them, and there were two that blew our mind. Absolutely, they're just spectacular in terms of the flavour that we were getting from them. And it didn't matter if we were prejudiced towards whiskey or anything else. This was a great drink, and so we had to buy it.
Can I interrupt slightly there? Have you diluted? Have you tried this with dilution? Because sometimes I find cognac, Armagnac a bit funny with dilution.
Very
Does it
good
work
question.
with water?
I actually, and I know this is against all the principles of nosing before tasting. I actually really like cognac and Armagnac being grape, from the grape rather than grain, with just a small lump of ice. And I think it allows the dilution and the flavour to kind of come together, if you like, rather than just dropping water into it.
Interesting.
So I have tried this all with water and with ice as well.
Cool. So there's a few comments that scroll past there. Get on with the Armagnac. Good point. Someone else said, my first Armagnac, like, welcome. Armagnac is brilliant. And Justine Hazelhurst said, why? Hi, Justine. Why Armagnac? I love Armagnac. Can I take that? I love Armagnac.
Yeah, no, go for it, because you know all about it. I just like the taste.
I don't know about, so I suppose whiskey bar for Royal Mile Whiskies, but also spirits as well. Drinkmonger, we sell a lot of spirits. That's also our shop. But anyway, I just love Armagnac. I was really excited when I heard you were going to bottle an Armagnac because I love it. I suppose Armagnac is often discussed in terms of in relation to cognac, both grape spirits, effectively from southwest of France, but they're really different. And I am very naturally drawn towards Armagnac. I get to try lots of both. And cognac is all about this kind of refinement and elegance and grace. That's what they're aiming for when they're making cognac. Whereas Armagnac, and down to the way it's made, is not like that at all. In youth, it can be fairly coarse, actually, but it's all about guts and glory and huge flavour that really appeals to me. And I think that's probably because primarily I'm a whiskey drinker. And I think Armagnac should appeal to a lot of whiskey palates, especially if you like big bruisers like Glendronach or Glenfarclas or Macallan or these kind of big sherry cask whiskies. There's a lot of flavour notes that really hit the same points. Shall I briefly say how Armagnac's made? Or
yeah, because from memory, it's got this kind of eau de vie, local, eau de vie on the back of a trailer style of distillation, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've only been there once, but it is very much like that. It is still a small industry. It's a drink that people have heard of, but very few people have tasted. And cognac got early exports around the world, really due to transport with the river that links it up to the Bordeaux exports, and it's been a big brand around the world or an important drink around the world for a long time. Armagnac did not have that, and it's still a very rustic area. Gascony, famous for what very tasty form of, but admittedly cruel goose pate. But anyway, how do you make Armagnac? So the principal difference is the still. It's a grape spirit. Do you know what grape they used in this one? Bacco.
Yeah.
Bacco.
Was it not a little bit of Uni Blanc as well, or was it pure Bacco?
It was pure Bacco Blanc, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So so a white grape. They make that into a wine, quite an acidic wine, and as you say, they are grower producers, farmer producers, and they may not even have their own still. In fact, that's quite common. And the still would be itinerant and come on the back of a truck and would come for a few days and distill effectively their wine. It would go into their casks, into their kind of cowsheds effectively and mature. So it's a very charming, rustic, small scale industry. But the key difference and why it's this guts and glory kind of flavor, this big bold flavor, while they use a column still, which we would associate with grain whiskey production, with very tall columns with lots and lots of plates, that produces a very high strength but relatively inert and light in terms of flavor, but very high in strength spirit. That's grain whiskey production. Their stills fit on the back of a truck and would have 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 plates. So what they're doing is distilling quite slowly. They're distilling a spirit that's actually quite low in strength. And so it's got lots of congeners, lots of esters, lots of flavor left in it. But it's pretty rough in its use, and it takes a long time to distill. But thankfully, well, not thankfully, but because the industry hasn't done very well, the prices are pretty good. So you can get a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old Armagnac. What are we, 25 here, aren't we?
25, yeah.
Yeah, at relatively affordable prices. I mean, single cask, 25-year-old cask strength. I can't remember what the retail price is, but Armagnac is great value, and people are really appreciating it.
I'm definitely looking forward to one of these coming home.
I'm gonna. Sorry.
Oh
yeah. So thanks, Connal, for putting that up. So that's the base of a column still, which, as you can see with this one, is wood fired, which is pretty common. So they use real fire, which is just the opposite of what you think of a grain whiskey distillery in Scotland. And many of the guys, or the families, I should say, down there who are making or growing grapes for turning into Armagnac, it might not be their primary source of income. They might also be cattle farmers. They might be making still wine. They might be doing the terrible but delicious goose thing with the pate. I really like Armagnac a lot, and so it's great that you bottle one. Oh yeah, they're cool. See, there's one on the back of a truck.
That's great. That's very smart.
Yeah. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plates there. I think it was. It's gone. But you also in the old days it was horse and cart as well. So well, tell me about the Armagnac. What do you think it tastes of?
It's just so much fruit in this.
Homemade marmalade.
I was right down the orange route as well. I was all my notes seem to be related to orange. You would expect like fig and prune and dried fruit and things like that. How do I put my notes on this one?
It's interesting enough. I spotted a little bit of a kind of rum and raisin thing going on as well, which I wasn't expecting. Beyond the tangy fruit, there's also quite raisiny.
Yeah, I realised why I can't find my notes. I was talking and I didn't write anything down. So lots of different types of orange. I was thinking like a cooked orange, posh marmalade, very posh dark marmalade, almost something a little bit orange sherbety.
Yeah.
A little bit of violet, which is not a flavour I care for.
Marmalade. Yeah.
You tend to get this rumbling fruit underneath, fig, prune, things like that, and then you get this little lift of a dried, floral, often violet kind of thing, often floating on the top of Armagnac. Yeah, I love it.
Just want to say,
bravo, chocolate.
There's lots of people tuning in from the industry as well, which is great to see. We've got George Wills is in. We've got Mr. Dundas is in. We've got apparently Ian Chang's in. I don't know whereabouts he is. But we've got people apparently in just tonight, which is great. So and people waking up in New Zealand also tuning in. So hi to everyone. If you could just let us know if you didn't get the tasting pack, there was only 165. Let us know what you're drinking. Just let us know what dram you're going to do tonight. We're talking about these lists and these drams, but it's just about whiskey in general. So let us know what you're having and your thoughts on our first ever Adelphi Ardnamurchan. We want to, there's some really positive stuff coming through. So yeah, just come. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a hidden secret, Armagnac. So should we go?
Arthur, all I would say, it's one of the great things about being able to do something like this as an independent bottler. We're not. Yes, we've got our distillery coming on, but the Adelphi arm, if you like, has got this flexibility. It's allowed to go and bottle an Armagnac or a rum or a Irish whiskey, whatever, or do an international blend. And it's I don't know whether it's the evolution, a natural evolution of a traditional independent bottler, or if it's just something we like doing. But the fact that we aren't attached to one brand in what we do at Adelphi allows us to be a bit more diverse, I suppose.
That's a good time to pour the liquid, actually, isn't it? Because we've done some. The Glover is unusual and innovative, creative. The Ardnamurchan is your own single malt, but as we pour the liquid, we're starting to talk about what you're known for, which is great independent bottling with very careful cask selection.
I haven't finished the second dram of the Armagnac yet.
So I'll give a very quick précis of what an independent bottler is, I suppose, in the liquid, just in case there's some people new to whiskey. Yes, an independent bottler would buy casks on a slightly shadowy market and bottle single malt produced by other companies. So in this case, Liquid, which is a distillery owned by Diageo that would be making lots and lots of whiskey to go into blends, principally like Johnny Walker. And independent bottlers kind of pick off the fringes, or not quite the fringes, but pick cask from this pool of stock. Sometimes the industry struggles to predict the right amount to make. So there is a little trading network that exists to allow for these shortfalls or surpluses, and independent bottlers tend to work around this market and choose exceptional casks and bottle them as singles. Independent bottling.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, slightly starting to get drunk nutshell. But anyway, carry on.
We were, I don't know if we were early to the game or late to the game, but we were, obviously my journey at Adelphi started in 2004, but Jamie Walker had started the company back in 1993 with the help of Charlie McLean. And when he started it, it was probably the year after, I think, Andrew started with Signatory, I think. Was that 92? I can't remember now.
I can't. So the year that Andrew started Signatory, early 90s, and he bought Edra in what, 2001, 2002, something like that. Yeah. But
it was still, I mean, apart from the great stalwarts like Cadenhead and G&M and the likes, it was still quite early days for independent bottlers. And Jamie's goal was just to buy and bottle things that he loved. And nothing's really changed, to be honest. We now have our own bottling warehouse, so we can do it ourselves. But the criteria for selection remains the same. We find these casks which we like, and we bottle them. And then we go off and find some more.
Yeah, well, while we all enjoy this liquid, how do you think the perceptions kind of changed of independent bottlers? Because I was thinking about this the other day. In that time, since I've been in the industry, which is about the same time as you, 2001 or something, I started with SMWS. It feels quite different in that it was almost like the independent bottlers were kind of like a nuisance, and there was a perception that it wasn't the real thing and it wasn't the official bottling. Yeah. But now, certainly with our customers, I think they are so valued. I mean, they always were, and I think the contribution to the industry and the contribution to whiskey appreciation. Sorry, that was one of those questions where I started asking a question and just answered it myself.
Well, I'll continue to answer it for you.
What do you think? What do you think?
I think I've heard two sides to it. I've heard the parasite side, and I've heard the symbiotic side. I prefer the latter, obviously.
Yes.
I think we work well together as distillers and independent bottlers, and it's not just about the bottlers hoovering up any excess production. It's about offering the whiskey drinkers, or even the people who haven't found whiskey yet, the opportunity to try different flavors rather than just single brands. Now, in terms of why I think it's developed, I mean, we've been very, very lucky in the demand side, if you like, less so in the supply side. But in the demand side, since the early 2000s, the single malt category has accelerated at a huge pace. And of course, independent bottling tends to be around that limited edition single malt, whether it be single cask or whatever. So that has helped. But I think also, as with many boutique businesses, if you want to call them that, and many niche businesses around the world, whether it be whiskey or telecoms or whatever, social media has helped a huge amount in that it's pretty much free marketing. So you don't need these massive marketing budgets to get your brand well known. And I think, certainly in the latter years, I never really understand social media, but Connal seems to do a pretty good job at it. In the latter years, we have built up an audience for Adelphi that we never expected we'd ever have for a company that produces relatively small amount of whiskey.
In our shop, certainly on the Royal Mile, I mean, the web is different, and I suppose access as well. It's not just being able to talk about it on social media, but online retailing has really contributed to someone who is interested in Adelphi or any of the other good independent bottlers can find the stock by searching it very quickly, which has helped. But in our shop, we often recommend independent bottlers to a complete novice to give that as their first taste of what whiskey should be. Unchill filtered, natural colour, interesting distillery, and debranded. And I suppose I like the debranding element of independent bottling, where you're just tasting whiskey fairly naked, effectively.
Yeah, it's almost anti-marketing. You almost want to be, I don't know how you describe it, but you basically, what we've always done, and a number of other people have done, is let the liquid talk for itself. And we get a lot of abuse for our labels being so small, and unreadable, illegible. But that's the whole point. You shouldn't have to read what's on the label. It's about what's in the bottle. I just see Frank's popped up from France. Good evening, Frank. And what's he saying? Liquid nose is amazing. Some sour notes, balsamic vinegar with something sweet underneath. Yeah, I mean, this is typical big sherry maturation. And the liquid, funny enough, I mean, it's a lighter spirit, but it's really holding up, this one.
I was going to say, I mean, it's an unusual, like, it's obviously a big sherry cask, not in terms of size, in terms of impact, but at the same time, it's not dominated. There's no sulfury, rubbery notes, and you can still taste that kind of floral, grassy, little bit fruity kind of heart that is liquid. It stood up for itself. So it's sorry, these are small, aren't they? These labels. The first fill X Oloroso hogshead. Yeah. It stood up for itself very well. What would you describe the sweet underneath? I like his balsamic note, by the way.
Balsamic is definitely, yeah. I mean, I got, when I tasted it earlier, it reminded me of a liquid that we did, actually a liquid and a Glen Grant that were quite similar. We did a long, long time ago, and it was cola cubes. You know, the little cola bottle sweeties you get. That was really coming through. So there is a sweetness, there's a sweet and sour kind of element as you taste. And then there's this vein of chocolate, almost cheap chocolate ice cream running through with toffee and stuff.
Yeah, I wrote chocolate, and obviously it's. I thought a sweet touch that almost like candy floss or something like the sweet bit at the fairground, and obviously it's fruity and got that kind of sherry cask kind of character, but it's not full on Christmas cake.
No, it's
more like
It's more fresh than that. It's red currants and black currants and things like that.
Yeah, I went down kind of tea cakes or hot cross bun kind of vibe. But it's not quite. It's not a sherry monster. You can't describe it as a sherry monster. It's got that it's got that colour, but once you open it, it's quite different to what you expect.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it.
Michael Smith says some very nice things about you and Cadenheads. Indeed, an excellent bottler. And we didn't shout out to someone earlier on who said they were watching from New Zealand in the morning. And that
we did.
No, I didn't. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I must be writing something there.
But there's some pretty dedicated people out there. I'm going to have to interrupt you chaps. Yeah, well, I'm interrupting all the time. But we've got a random, and I do mean random, pulled them in.
All right.
I thought that it'd be fine form to get someone who features regularly at our Adelphi taste panels. He sits at our taste panel and says basically yay or nay, and we still class him as our chief nose. So I'd love to bring in the illustrious Charles McLean.
Oh gosh. Oh, there he is.
Thanks, Connal. Can you hear me all right? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank God for that. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. I mean, I would explain to your viewers that I've been advising Adelphi since it started in 1992 or 93 with Alex and the but anyway, I've been listening in with great interest to everything that's being said. I've tasted the whiskies. It's maybe why I'm slurring a little bit, because I've been impressed by all of them. I would confirm that what Alex was saying about the extraordinarily high selection criteria that we adopt. I mean, it's quite remarkable. I mean, apparently, he tells me that we reject about 82% of the samples that were sent. And just to pick up quickly on the business of independent bottlers, some of them are very, very good. Some of them will bottle anything they can lay their hands on. It's increasingly difficult to find good casks. Well, when I say good casks, I mean casks that will stand up as single malt bottlings. I mean, by and large, the whiskies never, very rarely do you find what we call an off cask, a bad cask. But if you're doing a single blend, a single malt with a lot of casks, you can smooth things out. If you're doing a single cask, the cask has to be exceptional. It really has to be exceptional to stand up, you know. And I have to say that a lot of the single cask bottlings that I have to look at, really, I mean, well, I would certainly reject with Alex for an Adelphi cask. So it is the independent bottlers had they had a poor reputation within the industry for the simple reason, and you touched on this, Arthur, that the brand owners do not have quality control, and so they're very nervous about independent bottlers bottling up shite casks, frankly, immature casks that are not of the standard or the quality that the brand owner wants. I often tell a story. I remember once being offered a dram from a 25-year-old Macallan, which had been bottled for one of the Scottish banks, Bank of Scotland, or the Royal Bank of Scotland, or whatever it was, and it was as pale as, well, dare I say it, as pale as piss. It was really, really thin looking. 25 years old, you know. And I knew that this cask, this bottle had come from a cask which was completely knackered, you know. And sure enough, when I tasted it, 25 years old, it was still immature. It still had immature characteristics. It was horrible, really it was. And so this can happen with irresponsible people who are selling casks. It's increasingly difficult for independent bottlers to find casks of sufficient quality, which is one of the reasons why Adelphi went into distilling, why Weems went into distilling, why Signatory went into distilling, why Gordon MacPhail went in. Well, actually, Gordon MacPhail has such deep resources that they probably didn't need to. But anyway, sorry. Why do I start off on this? What do you want me to talk about?
Well, hang on. I think we're on the Kalila now, aren't we? We're on the Kalila.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh,
We're on the Kalila. Everyone drink the Kalila.
Okay. Yeah.
But I would be certainly interested in your assessment of the first 4 drams we've had. Do you want to sum up the drams that we've had today, Charlie? So far, and then we can all take the Kalila together.
I can read my notes. I thought the Glover was good. It's a 4-year-old whiskey. It's quite young. It was the nose was kind of vaporous, but mild overall, not sharp. You know, it's a 54%, 54.7% alcohol, which one might expect it to be a bit more nippy. The aroma was very interesting because it'd be quite interesting to think, you know, if you were given this blind, would you and were told where in the world does it come from? You might not immediately think Scotch, you know, because it has this lucidity. You know, Dave Broom, my dear friend, talks about this lucidity, this transparency that Japanese whiskey has, which I don't generally get, as a matter of fact. But it had this sort of pale fruits for me, lychees, green apple, grapes, and then it really it comes to life in the mouth, much more alcoholic in the mouth, numbing, and then fruity, and then slightly savoury, which I was thinking of like chicken bones, chicken skin, whatever. Anyway, that's that one. Dispatched. So I wasn't that impressed, quite frankly. Sorry, Alex. Sorry.
You don't like Japanese whiskey, Charlie. That's the problem.
I know a little bit. I've spent the whole last 2 days writing about Kurosawa. And by the way, I haven't yet received the sample, but I've been imagining it. And now, what do you want to put? The Ardnamurchan. Now, Ho Chang, I must say that I think this Ardnamurchan is a superb example of a West Coast whiskey. I know you mentioned Oban and Talisker. These are sort of extremes, and one would choose to leave out Tobermory or Lejeune, which I think are rather coarse whiskies, in my view. But the West Coast style is maritime and lightly peated. This one, where are my notes? Here we are. I didn't get much smoke to begin with, but then it emerged, particularly in the mouth. But it's so saline, mineralic, chalky, with light smoke on the nose. But then it really fills out, you know, in the taste. I mean, it is remarkable. It's a very, very drinkable whiskey at 4 years old, and it can only get better. I mean, and Alex, we've been looking at these over the years, and it's developing so well. And that's another 4-year-old whiskey, but I think, dare I say it, infinitely better than the Glover. The Armagnac, I don't really want to cope.
I think that's a compliment for you there. I think, Adelphi.
What's that? Sorry, Arthur.
I said that's a compliment, very much so, because he made the Ardnamurchan. Well, because he made the Ardnamurchan, and you're saying it's that filthy chichiboo that's got in the way in the glover.
Oh dear, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that.
No, of course. And the Linkwood? No, the Armagnac.
Let's go quickly on the Armagnac. Now,
yeah.
The only thing I want to say about the Armagnac is to support you, Arthur. It's very interesting. Cognac and Armagnac, brandy, generally speaking, is, unless you're going to slosh soda or whatever into it, is generally drunk by gentlemen, straight. You would never think of having a digestif and then adding water, which you would with you might with whiskey. And this was very interesting because my notes, I love the Armagnac, I might say, and I do love Armagnac generally. It didn't seem to me as a 25-year-old spirit to be mellow. Heavens, it's 51.1% alcohol, which is in itself not a bad thing, but the mild, complex fruits. I got your orange, but candied, sort of overripe pear, Calvados. I used a touch of Calvados. And then there was these herbal notes. I think you identified it as something slightly different. I identified it as sort of rosemary and sage, but there was a herbal note underneath. Very nice, complex, and so on. You were picking up floral notes, I think. Somebody.
Yeah, but I'm going back to it now. Sage is a really good call, actually. I love sage.
I was getting that sort of.
It's sage. That's brilliant.
Rosemary sage, but the where am I here? Yeah, it's got a lovely sweet. It's sweet but not cloying taste.
Yeah,
palate cleansing. But water, you add water, closes down the aromas and reduces the taste. And so it's a good example. Don't add water to brandy.
I find cask strength often. I find cask strength cognacs and cask strength Armagnacs a bit tricksy because they're too strong and you can't add water to them because they seem to collapse. But maybe that's just me.
Fall apart,
yeah.
Sorry,
that's my ice cube technique. It's a more staggered approach to adding the water.
I'll try.
Albeit it kills the nose.
But you see, it is quite interesting because this is to do with bottling strength. Now we all know that the higher bottling strength is, in principle, a good idea with whiskey because you add water to reduce it to a palatable strength. But as we well know, Alex, because we've looked at hundreds and hundreds of samples, cask samples, if they're too high strength, now where do we go? And you add water, then they can close down. They can.
But it's all a part of this. Part of the beading that we experience, when we shake the bottle, look at the bubbles, it has to be a certain strength to bead, but the higher it is, if it's almost forced to the 60s, if you like, it doesn't bead well and it doesn't like water.
Yeah, and this is what I'm going to touch on because I've got in front of me, I've been looking at 4 samples of Rosebank today. From 1989, 1990.
Is Gordon? Just check.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
I'm not going to tell you. You can't see it actually, but the first one, which is at 55% volume. This is 1989, and it was pretty harsh and difficult. Added water and it worked quite well, but I didn't score it that high. It was a very nice drink, but I didn't score it as high. the next ones, which were they were at cask strength, but down to 46% alcohol, estimated strength, and they're so much better. So very high strength is in the cask is not necessarily desirable. If you reduce it in the bottle, it probably makes it more acceptable. But it's a curious thing. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, there's a whole different debate about the alcohol level going into the wood and what it extracts from the wood as a young spirit. And,
So
yeah, we could go on for hours on it.
let's not. No.
Carry on. Yep.
I really want to start talking about this Kalila.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, right.
So,
right.
let's go on. But I want to know what you thought of the liquid as well, Charlie.
Did you like the liquid, Charlie?
I did. Linkwood's a very light spirit, and this is a very dark. This is done very well. Extol Rosa Hog. It must be a US oak, although I'm surprised that the color is so deep. Wonderful, deep, almost rubious color, red color, with extraordinarily good beading. Alex and I are very keen on beading. We shake the bottle, and it's always a very good indication. You might explain there. Look at that foaming up. It's like Guinness. The foams up. It's a very good sign. It's a very good sign of texture with aged whiskies. It's an indication both of mouthfeel, texture, and also age, actually, because you don't get a higher bead at with young spirit. Now, what was I saying about this? It's quite close to start. Then I was getting cherries macerated in syrup, but it's dry. It's a dry, and as somebody mentioned, it's slightly sour. I got umami, that kind of savory note. So it's an interesting balance of light sweetness, and not so much sour. I'm wrong there, but sort of umami, savory. It becomes when you add water. Sour cherries, I got sour cherries. Sandalwood, and then after a little while, it becomes slightly woody. Sandalwood cigar boxes, and then that's right. It becomes more. But this is after you've added water. It becomes a bit more bosky, a bit more woody. Taste is sweet, then dry and savory, with very, very slight sulfury note, but it's almost invisible. That's my thought. Anyway, but my thoughts are only as good as your thoughts.
No, thank you, Charlie. That was fascinating.
Oh, that's all. Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie.
And this Kalila's a cracker.
Kalila's good.
Yeah.
Where's my Kalila gone? I've got it here.
Where's it there?
This is a beauty. This is a real beauty.
Yeah, great way to finish.
Connal, can you put that message up from Mickey Plummer on the foaming?
Where is he? Oh, there.
Oh.
Well, that one. That one? Yeah, so just quickly on this, because we kind of alluded to this, Charlie, as you were speaking. The beading, it has to be above about 46, 47, 48% to bead. But the process of aging, when the spirit hits the cask, it's going through different levels of extraction, subtraction, all these kind of things. And it doesn't really get to the stage of where all the oils and everything combine to allow this beading to happen until it's about 4 or 5 years old minimum. And then it's a very gradual process beyond that. Is that right, Charlie?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that you do not get... Well, can I just go back? I hope it be a bit boring, but the beading test, which is simply sort of shaking the bottle and looking at the foam in the Adelphi blend, by the way. You know, my recommended.
Advertising.
The bubbles that form on the surface of the liquid are called the beads. Now, you do not get a lingering bead under. Well, we've experienced, Alex, but under, as a general rule, under about 50% alcohol. So if it beads, it tells you that it's over 50%. That's the first thing you might look at. But as Alex says, the bead doesn't link. If you shake a bottle of whiskey at 60% alcohol in a young, or new make spirit, it doesn't bead. It fizzes away, just disappears, like whiskies at 40% alcohol. But when it lingers, we've discovered that that tells you something about age. You don't get the lingering bead, so it has to be over 50. It tells you it's approximately over 50% alcohol, but it also tells you that it's got a bit of age. And so even before you nose and taste the whiskey, you can make a judgment on the likely and the likely age and strength. The beading also indicates that there's oils in the liquid that will give it lovely mouthfeel. And so beading is a really useful tool. And it comes through particularly in the texture, in the mouthfeel. Is that right? What was that? Yeah. Was that one you say? Yeah.
No, perfect. Thank you.
Another question from Thomas. Wonder if the Lincoln and the Kalila were finished in sherried quarter casks. Nope.
No,
you don't do. Do you do any finishing?
It depends how you. We do some re-racking.
You do some re-racking, yeah.
The difference, in my opinion, is re-racking is into the same wood when the previous cask is either damaged or not doing its job. We do not cross-contaminate, if you want to call it that word. We don't change flavors, and we certainly don't reduce to smaller casks.
Mm-hmm.
So this Kalila, Alex, was fully matured in a sherry seasoned hogshead.
Yes.
I think.
Well, we assume seasoned. We don't know if it's seasoned or bodega because we don't have the history.
Almost certainly, but and the fact that it's a hogshead would suggest that it's American oak. On the aroma, the color is very good, but the aroma would suggest American oak for me.
I don't know. I mean, it's quite tannic.
I'm getting in line with what you're talking about, tannic. I'm getting a kind of black tea note. I know we all talk about Lagavulin as being associated. That's the one that has the Lapsang Souchong tea note. But I'm not necessarily saying Lapsang Souchong. I'm just mean like an old tea caddy with that black leaf tea in it, which I find absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
As well as what you would expect with Kalila, which is actually, I was just about to say it, Ryan Stewart. There's a kind of smoked bacon, ham, and a grassy lift. Yeah, I wasn't thinking that, but bacon and ham and smoked meats, a little bit of iodine. What else did I write?
It's like gammon steak on a Barbie, with a bit of pineapple on top.
Yeah. Beautiful. Love it. Yeah.
We shout out to my two elder daughters. One turns 18 tomorrow and the other turns 20 on Sunday. We've been practicing purely for the weekend, of course. We've been practicing making espresso martinis. And this reminds me of the Kahlua that goes into that.
Okay, so coffee.
Espresso crema.
I was thinking blackjack sweets, sweet licoricey kind of thing as well. But it's so delicious. It's such a lovely Kalila.
It's a real cracker. It really is. It really is. And the distillery character comes through. the maritime, slightly smoky smoked ham. I always get, or smoked cheese. I always get from Kalila, and that's coming through elegantly. It's a really lovely expression of Kalila, and Kalila is and it's uncommon in sherry seasoned casks. And that there's no for me there's no obvious sherry notes, so called, but it's got a richness to it that the cask has added a richness.
It feels like a special occasion to have Kalila in sherry. It's rare that you get to do it, and it's probably the whiskey single malt I've tried more different expressions of than anything else.
Really?
Yeah, I would say Kalila. So many, because of all the independent bottlers. In terms of, although there was a scarcity for a while, but I've tried so many different Kalilas. Always good to great. Always good to great.
It's really the only available Islay. But I tell you what, Arthur, it is extraordinarily consistent.
Yeah,
we found that, Alex. The offerings that you.
Clynelish and Kalila are probably the most consistent.
Yeah, I would say.
In terms of our tasting, if you like, our sampling over the years, I would put those two at the most consistent.
I would agree with you, and I would add actually Gunmurray. Or not that we get much of that now, but what's the other one? And Tandu, funnily enough, both Highland distilleries, but which are generally the samples are reliable, but the classic ones, I agree. And I mean, Kalila is just so consistent and so regular.
There's a message from Andy. Andy Clark saying, just gone back through, which is always a really good thing to do. If you can ever be persuaded to leave a little bit in your glass and have a different glass for every dram. He's gone back through and saying what a mad difference. Now, when we were putting this tasting together, it's obviously based on our new releases that are coming out in a couple of weeks' time, apart from the Ardnamurchan, obviously. We had no idea what this tasting was going to have in it until we, started bottling the miniatures, and a big shout out to Gordon and his daughter for doing that so quickly.
Can I also shout out to our warehouse team, because someone mentioned about operations during COVID, and it's difficult, and working at distance, and there's to keep people separate. And I'm sure Gordon was the same. Some of them coming in at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, and some working a lot later and splitting it up. And to turn around all these packs after Gordon had done a monumental effort to get them bottled up, and us get them to Korea and wherever they turned up in the end, Taiwan, Australia, pretty much all of them on time. Thank you, warehouse team. I know some of them are watching and drinking.
Oh, great.
Thank you,
and Gordon. Thank you, Gordon.
And Jessica.
And I was going to say, just you're not getting away with that, because actually all the Armagnac and the Ardnamurchan you did yourself, Alex.
I did, actually, on this very table.
Charlie's on the fags.
Oh, Charlie.
I've been holding back until finishing the whiskies. You'll notice. And when I have a whiskey, I want a cigarette. But I hold back. I can.
You're a pro.
Have we got time for some questions, guys? Have we got time for
there more? Yes, there more come in.
Yeah, well, I haven't even asked the ones that I was given prior, so I'm
go, yeah, because we've been going a while, but yeah, crack on, ask questions.
We're still got 180 on.
Okay.
I thought I'd just give it a wee whirl. What I'll ask is I'll actually ask these questions first. So this is from the guys at Malt Review, probably based at you, Alex. Any hints on the new Breath of Speyside, which is coming to the shelves very soon?
So the breath series we brought in back in 2006 from memory, 2007, to allow us to bottle single casks of single malt whiskey that were not technically available for sale. Now that might sound a bit back to front, but there are a number of contracts quite rightly involved in the whole trading of casks between different distilleries, and some of those contracts prohibit casks being bottled as single malt, i.e. they have to be blended. So in order for us occasionally to get one of these casks, we agree not to name it. And this was all going swimmingly well until someone decided that they knew better than us, no names mentioned, and names started appearing online. And it went a bit quiet after that, shall we say. It's very important we protect those who do not wish to be named as a brand. So the way we do it now is quite simple. We get sent literally blind samples, coded blind samples. We select the ones we want. Those casks then get put into individual containers. So no cask number, no make, and the containers get shipped to us for bottling. So in answer to the question, we have no idea, I'm afraid.
Oh, you actually have no idea now. That's interesting. Gosh.
So from Malt Review, we've noticed the Dalyuen, the recent Laudale, going for silly money online, which is disappointing as it is priced to drink, we feel. What impact do these flippers have on your thinking on the next Laudale?
Oh, what a good question. Yeah.
Well,
I'm not going to answer.
Arthur, I can answer my part, and then you as a retailer, maybe your part.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
From a bottler's point of view and from Adelphi's point of view, we bottle to drink. We do not bottle for collections or for speculation. That is why we don't really go into packaging in a huge, great way. Our labels are so small. We buy on flavor. We do not buy on name or age. And it's as simple as that. We cannot obviously control what happens to those bottles once they've gone out of our warehouses. Obviously, in a funny kind of way, we're very honoured that some people like to invest, if you like, or to flip them, but they're not designed to be that, and they never were. Arthur?
So flippers generally, that's a big topic I would rather answer in public when sober. But generally speaking, I think that would be a shame if that's what happened to Adelphi. There is great demand for it at the moment. We sell things to drink as well. We limit the number of bottles people can buy. We find ways now to try and put it in the hands of drinkers. But we sell everything we get. We sell it as fairly as possible. And I did notice actually the Laudale went really quick this time, but I had no idea that it was being sold quickly for lots of money. But honestly, on a personal level, our heart sinks when we see that. As a retailer, we don't like it. We have a publicly released ethics policy that we do sell it all, that if it's an allocated product, staff aren't allowed to buy it, which was actually one of the nice things about this pack. Loads of staff are like, I'm getting involved because we never get to try them because we can't buy them ourselves because we try and spread them out among customers as much as possible. And we sell at RRP as well. And we don't hoard.
Great.
So, that's our attitude. Yes, our heart sinks. I don't think it'll happen too much with Adelphi, but the last year has been a bit different. But I hope it goes away, and shame on them.
Another question here. This is from Stuart Monroe. What does Adelphi do with casks that they didn't turn out how they hoped? Do they sell them on rather than bottling? Do you want me to take that? Or do you want to go?
Yeah, you can. Why don't you take that?
Yeah, basically, Stuart, just to answer your question. We used to be able to buy casks one by one, maybe 2 or 3 at a time. There are times now that we're buying bigger parcels of casks. It's just the way it's gone. And naturally you might get a few duds, if you like, in those. If they don't meet our standard at Adelphi, if they don't reach Adelphi bottling standard, we basically, if we feel it's got a little bit of potential, we might keep it in the warehouse, and if it doesn't, we'll put it back onto the cask market, and someone will, more time than not, pick it up. Is basically the answer to that.
Either as a trade or for cash. So quite often those rejects, if you want to call them that, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're just not suitable as single casks, in our opinion. Yeah. But quite often those are, in a funny way, more valuable to us than the bottles, the ones we do bottle, because it allows us to trade for more. So it keeps the flow of casks maintained, if you like.
There's a few Ardnamurchan questions here. We've got, are we going to be bottling a natural colour above 46%? We've already answered that, yes. What is the fermentation time at Ardnamurchan? It's between 72 and...
a weekend, so 110 probably.
I think it averages about 74 hours on that. What is the process for Adelphi sourcing casks?
We're talking mature
stock. Yeah.
Mature stock. Just keeping in touch with as many suppliers as possible. And by suppliers, I would say distillers, brokers, private cask owners. Just keeping in touch. We don't tend to buy at silly prices. A lot of the what's so-called the whiskey lock of the 80s and 90s is now reaching pretty stratospheric pricing in the market. And although price never really was an issue in the past, or certainly not a constituent of the selection process, I do have to keep an eye on it now, because there are some pretty crazy ones out there. But no, we've been around long enough. We're lucky enough to have some decent supply channels.
It's no great surprise that you don't tell us where you buy your casks from. that is a very much trade secret. But from a retailer's perspective, so my job is getting lots of new price lists in from independent bottlers. Adelphi's list always feels different, and I can tell that your sourcing practice is a little bit different. You have a few more private casks than maybe usual. With the other independent bottlers, you see a pattern coming through, and it's like, oh, right, they've got some of that. Oh, right, they've got some of that. And you kind of see the same malts popping up at the same time. Mm. I notice with your lists, you're finding funny little parcels from here and there, and keep it up.
Thank you.
A question here from Andy Clark from the Herald. He said, you need to tell us, guys, which are your favourites of the evening. Mine is definitely the Kalila, with the Linkwood catching up fast. What's the drama of the night?
Andy, I would agree with you 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I think that the I would add the Ardnamurchan, to be honest, because the for
Charlie, I'll see you later.
Honestly, for its age, the potential. But it's a very good drinking dram as it stands. But the potential is huge. But I would agree with you. The Ardnamurchan, the Kalila, is my favourite. I've never been a huge fan of Linkwood, but that particular expression of Linkwood is very interesting indeed, and that's savoury, and because it's unusual to find Linkwood in an ex-sherry cask, and so I'd agree with you. But I would add the Ardnamurchan as my favourite of the evening.
Great, Arthur.
Kalila. The Armagnac's a different thing. That's just like a fun thing, which is absolutely delicious, and I loved it. But I think Kalila, I can't see past that. Kalila was excellent. Linkwood was great. Ardnamurchan, I still found it a bit cluttered, but it's so exciting and so promising. The Glover, I thought it was really well put together. I thought it was really successful. Yeah, and Linkwood delicious. But Kalila, it's hard to see past this one.
Alex?
Well, I have got an eye on some of the comments flicking down, and there are some nice Glover comments coming through.
Mm.
From the blending point of view, it was a real revelation, and just so happy that it worked, because it's not just about Chichabu and Ardnamurchan, it's about the future of where these projects will be going. But yeah, look, I'd echo everyone else. The Kulila is a stunner. The link was great. Armagnac, as I said earlier, I'll definitely have a bottle back home. One of the problems of traveling a lot, although we're not doing that so much anymore at the moment, is you never get to actually buy your own stock because it's all sold by the time you get home. Make sure you have a bottle of Armagnac coming home. And yeah, Armagnac, the Ardnamurchan, just really loving seeing it in a natural form, and very, very excited to start putting it together as a single malt later this year.
Great. The Niall Woods has asked, how do you manage to produce such fantastic younger whiskies? I'll take this one if you don't mind. And it's basically, for a wee while now, we've been actively sourcing first fill bourbon, but predominantly for the last wee while, we've been going after first fill sherry stock for Adelphi, but for a really good reason, that we can use that refill wood up at the distillery. I got a really interesting question from it was James from Compass Box. He was emailing asking James Saxon. He was asking about our wood policy, and do we re-rack? And yes, we do re-rack, as Alex was explaining earlier. However, a lot of these whiskies, for example, the Kalila and things like that they aren't re-racked. That is a first fill Oloroso hogshead. In its purity. So yes, we do. We don't often, but we do. And but these ones aren't. But we get a lot of value out of it, because we can use then that first fill cask up at the distillery as a refill. So it's very important for our wood policy up at the distillery as well as Adelphi.
Just adding to that, Connal, refill for a nascent distiller like us. Quality refill stock of casks is almost more valuable, it's 10 times as valuable as spending money on first fill. First fill brings on the whiskey quicker, but you need to have something that's good quality refill to allow it to age for 18, 20 years plus. And that is the hardest to get your hands on when you start. Otherwise, you have to wait until your second fill.
Yeah. Stuart Monroe, what a guy. Oh, he's
Sorry, I've just clicked off that.
He said something very nice about Royal Mile Whiskies,
including buy you guys.
Does he work
including that we're true whiskey geeks.
Tim from the Netherlands, a great guy. He's behind Maltstock, the Relaxed Whiskey Festival. It's the Armagnac wins for him tonight.
Yeah, but he's from across. He's from across the water. What do you expect?
What?
He's from across the channel. What do you expect?
I know you can just.
Maybe Maltstock will become a brandy festival rather than a whiskey festival. Awful tune! You
a relaxed brandy festival.
Good question from my fine colleague Mark Davidson, and I should have mentioned Norbert Merricks as well. He said some very lovely things about the Kalila early on as well. Another excellent colleague of ours. But Mark, who the Jolly Toper, who manages our Edinburgh shop. Yep. Hi, Mark. Good question. Who does the blending for Adelphi?
Well, there's not much blending done, but the most recent blend. Here's an ad for the what do they call it? The Pillage and Spillage. Alex and myself, Arthur, and with some help from Richard Patterson, advice. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure I was there. Yeah.
So here you have the four master blenders, or have put together this the two vatted malt, blended malt as they call it now, and blended whiskey which will be sold for charity. This is a great opportunity to promote it.
Yeah, go for it. Go for
Charity for a charity called Feedback Madagascar, which they exist to build wells for the poor people in Madagascar. Now, this has all been done by Adelphi, and with the huge support of the whisky industry on the west coast of Scotland. And it will come to market whenever it's decided. We haven't yet. It's all been vetted now, and when the green light goes on, where things ease a little bit, it'll be bottled by Adelphi, and then it'll be made available through Royal Mile Whiskies. Arthur giving his hand up, at some sort of ridiculous price, but they nevertheless all goes to support the poor people in Madagascar. So that's where the blending comes from. The four of us.
Plus Keir
as well.
With the advice of the master blender Richard Patterson. So it's not random. Look out! It's a good blend. It's going very well. Mm-hmm.
Do you think Mark was referring to the Broer blend, or do you think he was referring to in general, Alex?
I don't know. I mean,
it was a pretty broad.
He's referring to the likes of Kilhard and Glover and
and the Glover.
Kilhard was a collaboration between distilleries in every respect. We each proffered a cask, and as you know, Connal, yourself, myself, and Anthony all sat down in Kilhoman and blended it. Likewise, the fusion whiskies, we do them in house. We're not scared to add pretty expensive stuff in there, because just like my many times great grandfather once said, blending is all about getting the best out of the constituent parts. It's all about making the best thing possible. And
I think your comment would carry more weight if you explained that your many times great grandfather was Andrew Usher. Surely, otherwise it's just some grandfather.
It's grandfather, yeah.
They're so modest.
This wee chappy.
Yeah.
Lovely. Was that the one I gave you? No, that's a very old one, isn't it?
Yeah, this is one I got from a great friend and importer in Japan, Kaz. We found it.
Cool.
I'm not professing to be a blender in any respect. I just I love what can happen when you put more than one make together, and it's really exciting in terms of the flavor and profile. And whether you get it right or not, I suppose, takes years of experience. But it's great fun, especially when we can do these international ones. Really, really exciting.
I've got Jason Lee, who's in South Korea at the moment. It must be 5 a.m. or something in South Korea. So thank you for saying that. There's a wee bit of echo there. Anyway, he's asking, how do you decide to stop the aging process in casks and bottle certain Adelphis? The truth is, Jason, we very much bottle just in time. We call it Adelphi time. So we buy a lot of mature stock ready to go. Recently that has changed. I think I would say probably, Alex, in the last 4 years, we have been able to buy bigger parcels of casks to be able to maybe, mature for a little bit longer in our warehouse inside. But for the majority, we buy casks to bottle.
Yeah, I would agree.
Cool. And Mark Davidson is referring to the private stock.
That's a secret, Mark. Unfortunately.
Are we gonna go there? No, we're not gonna go there.
No, don't go there.
Let me just chime in here.
I'll delete it.
Whiskey in the world. How do I get in front of the camera? the private stock is a wonderful standard. Well, I'm sure that we would like to describe it as a premium blended Scotch whisky, but it strips down. I tell you what, it's a great thing against this virus thing that's going on, and keep your. It's well known to be a disinfectant, an interior disinfectant. Wonderful, wonderful. I was involved in adjusting, not making, but adjusting the blend, and I do get a bit of a discount, by the way, from Adelphi. So I'm speaking as a supporter. But I love it to death. I love it to death.
Well, I don't think
Adelphi.
Yeah, that is not product placement just for the evening.
No.
I don't think I've ever been to your house, Charlie, and not been offered a half pint of Adelphi.
It's a half pint, yeah. That's the measure. It's a half pint.
Yeah, that's my standard measure. Yeah.
We're getting a lot of questions on pricing of the drams this evening. So
give us a rundown.
Are you quite happy for me to go through that, Arthur?
Yeah, I fixed that. I fixed that this morning. So, and also people were asking about release time. I think you said it, but it still needs to be labelled. It still needs to get to us and other retailers. You can choose to buy from other retailers. But we're talking around about May the 4th, May the 5th, something like that. And is that right?
A comment there that I want to mention from Tim that this is now officially longer than One Nation Under Whiskey podcast, an achievement in itself. Basically, we've talked shite for 2 hours and 12 minutes. Well done, lads.
Toon's telling us to stop, isn't he? We'll stop.
Basically, that's him saying it's about time to wrap up, lads. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've still got Weetabix from breakfast next to me before we start.
I just miss you guys. I miss you guys.
Yeah, it's great. This is our first time doing this, and I've had a ball doing it. But,
okay, so tell us the prices, and that'll be the wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, yeah, splendid.
Yeah. Dram number 1 was the Glover. Charlie's going. Are you going, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm going to try and I'm going to go and boil an egg. I've given up supper. I'm going to go and boil an egg. And the
okay. Go on, boy.
Thanks,
God bless you.
Charlie.
Right.
No.
There you go.
Okay. I thought he was having his dinner before the tasting.
That was the plan.
Yeah, that was the plan. Okay, pricing. The Glover is going to be, these are going to be retail pricing from Royal Mile Whiskies, hopefully released second week of May. 114.95, and these are all in pounds. So £114 and 95 pence for the Glover. Second was we're not selling the second. It was a cask sample. The Armagnac is third at £126 and 95 pence. And then what did we have after that? We had the Linkwood, which will be £74 and 95 pence, and finishing on the Kalila, which will be £81 and 95.
Which will be £95.
Oh, sorry.
No. It's worth more than that.
No, it's priced for it's age. Like it's as simple as that. So.
Great. Well, I've had a lovely evening. Thanks very much for setting it up, guys, and thank you, Connal, for all the technical side.
Yeah, no, it's been great actually. I mean, we've run over nearly an hour, but yeah. We've still got 153 people listening to our rubbish, so we must.
I think they just left their computers on and gone to bed. To be honest.
Yeah.
Right. Well, cheers, guys.
Arthur, big thanks to you guys and all the team at Royal Mile, and a huge thanks to everyone who's tuned in. Connal has been working really hard on this, and Charlie's bookcase. Really good to hear and see names from all over the world, and hopefully this will be the first of many. So thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just do a wrap up, guys, and we'll leave you to it. Thank you very much, Alex and Arthur. And we'll just leave Charlie's bookcase there for a wee memento. Yeah. Listen, yeah, thanks very much everyone for tuning in. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you all, and I hope you've enjoyed it. This is a first for us, and it's unbelievable to have 250 people listening to our rubbish babbling on. But I hope you enjoyed the whiskies. Obviously a couple of firsts there tonight. We had the first look at the Glover, Ardnamurchan cask sample, our first ever bottled Armagnac, and 2 single cask samples that we're about to release. So yeah, these will all be available around the world. Well, I say around the world. They're going to be available mainly in the UK, a couple of export countries, and the Glover we're going to try and get out there as much as we can, but it'll be a wee bit later, just given to the circumstances that we're currently in. But we hope you're staying safe, and this maybe took your mind off current situations for an hour or two, and that was the whole point of it. We'll be back. I've got a London Whisky Club tasting in a couple of weeks' time, and we're already planning tastings in New Zealand, Taiwan, the Netherlands, and who knows what's going to be after that. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I will leave it here. I've babbled on for quite enough. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, and good night, and yeah, all the best. Cheers.
We are the first legal distillery on the peninsula. When we were setting the whole thing up, it was very important for us to get this vision across. It has to be one of the most natural around. Everything, all the raw materials are local, and there's no harm to the environment at all. The process of whiskey hasn't fundamentally changed over centuries. The industry's been going for so long that it's quite difficult to innovate. Having said that, because of our remote location, we've been able to look at the way we heat and power the plant. All our fuel, which is in wood chip, is harvested from local forestry from about 1.5 miles away. And the power comes from a hydro generator on the same river where we take our cooling water from. So it's not only sustainable and of course renewable, but it makes sense in this remote location. To be able to show your spirit is unique because of its location, right from the barley and the water, all these different factors, is great, and you will always then stand out on a crowded shelf. The story actually means something, you can taste it. Your nose and the receptors in it are connected to the front of your brain, and this is where you should, if you haven't had too much whiskey, store your memories. So what you're actually trying to do when you're smelling a whiskey for the first time is to trigger a memory. It becomes your story, it becomes what you think it is, which is much more fun.